Alright, here's episode 3. We left off at Brazil and Portugal, how they're related. I was cut off at the end. I didn't get to sort of do an outro, but that's okay because we were sort of only halfway through the idea. Now we're looking at the language of Portugal, which is kind of its own beast. It's a completely different language from Spanish. That's why it's Portuguese, not Spanish. But a lot of people seem to compare the two, seem to think they're about the same. They're really not. And we'll see, we'll discuss, we'll learn, we'll do all those awesome things that you like to do in this video. I think this one's going to run a little short if I'm not too long-winded. Basically, I've read a little bit of this website so far. What we've got here, we're talking about Portuguese is a Latin sort of language. Comes from Latin. It's a Romance language, therefore it evolved from that. It was established in the 15th and 16th century as something not the just original Roman Latin after the Roman Empire fell in the 9th century. So we have a it's not a very old language by that standard. The oldest languages on Earth are ones that you find in places like China and India and I think Iran and places like that where people have lived for so long. Portugal has been inhabited for that long, but it's not. The language was not established that early. So we see, this is where I had gotten to before the video started. The alphabet and writing system, you have loan words, Wi-Fi, yoga software. We do that in English. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but you've probably, if there's a word you've heard that you can't pick apart and think like, where did that come from? What are the parts of that word? It's probably a loan word. So like, I don't know, let's look at this. Let's look here. Pardon me. Alright, here. The word loan word. Loan word. It's two words, compound word put together. Loan word. Loan? Where does that come from? I don't know. Word? That's English, I think. Like from England. But loan could be from anywhere. It could be from France or Germany or somewhere. That's the kind of thing we're talking about here. So, and loan words in this case are things that wouldn't get, like modern things usually don't get a different translation because it's it's easier, and our communication is so quick in this day and age with Wi-Fi that it's like you almost don't even have time to develop a new word as a foreign language speaker, and we can exchange information. We can tell each other what something means in whatever language we need to be speaking at any given time with things like Google Translate and like Duolingo and stuff that allow us to communicate easier. So loan words are more common these days in other languages because of that. So it's an interesting thing to point out. The writing system. We have a lot of unique letters in Portuguese. Let's see. The writing system in Portugal is identical to the alphabet for the language of Brazil, of course. And the spelling of Portuguese words is largely phonemic. Both dialects also use the same diacritic marks. C with a squiggly under it, the A with the dash above it, the A with the chevron, the A with the long squiggly, the A with the dash pointed that way, the E dash, all this. And digraphs, CH, LH, NH, RR, SS, QU, GU. These are, I guess, compound letters, kind of. However, the pronunciation of both versions of Portuguese language is quite distinct. So yeah, there's an accent. It's really more of a dialect in Brazil, and that's why when you see in language stuff, in language settings, it's usually the flag that represents the language spoken is usually Brazil's, because I think Brazil has a much higher population, and so they base Portuguese translations of things on the Brazilian dialect. Unfortunately for Portuguese people in Portugal. Portuguese language and geographical distribution. In Portugal, they speak 99% Portuguese. Wow, who could have guessed? However, only 5% of total Portuguese speakers live in Portugal. The highest prevalence of Portuguese is actually in Brazil. Approximately 200 million people speak Portuguese, the Portuguese language in Brazil as their mother tongue. That's a lot of people. There's 300 million people in America. So think about that in terms of the population we're looking at here in Brazil. There are also large Portuguese-speaking populations in other countries in the world. Some examples of the countries are Angola, Mozambique, Guinea, Bissau, East Timor, Cape Verde, Equatorial Guinea, and Macau. Macau is in China, I think, if we're talking about the same thing I'm thinking of. It's near Hong Kong. It was a colony. Angola, Mozambique, those are bigger countries. In Africa, they were colonies. I'm guessing Guinea, Bissau, East Timor, Cape Verde, and Equatorial Guinea were also colonies. Don't forget, there's also communities of Portuguese speakers in the U.S., Canada, and several countries in Europe. In France, they've got 800,000 speakers. Damn, that's a lot. And I did not mean to swear that, but that surprised me. It's 1.2% of France's population. Switzerland, 104,000 speakers. 1.2% of the population. And in Luxembourg, that's 83,000 speakers. I didn't even think there were that many people. Luxembourg is tiny. It's 13% of the population. That's not... The translation services isn't fairly important. But it is good to note that there are some. I guess that's kind of their advertising here. So, yeah, that's really all there is to write home about as far as this website goes. And I don't think... I think that's a good coverance of it. I know I rushed it a little bit, but I feel like the bases we covered. You look at Portuguese and you look at Spanish, and there's a lot of similarities. It's stuff like the words for the, the. It'll be like de, de in both, but maybe pronounced slightly differently. Let's see, what are some Portuguese words I know? I know the word chove, chuva. Those two mean they have relation to rain, like raining. There's a song by Jorge Ben called Chove Chuva, and it's sort of a way to say it's raining. I know it's not terribly helpful or informative, but it's an example of a word. I'm not positive on the Spanish equivalent. I know in Italian it's piove. Piove is rain. So they say piove in Italian and chove in Portuguese. You can see there's a little similarity. There's some deep root Latin there. You know what I mean? What's another one? I know in Spanish, I believe bem is like... Let me not say something that's incorrect here. Let's actually look that up. Bem. Spanish. Bem. Bem. What does bem mean in Spanish? Bem. Really. Okay. Bem. Portuguese, bem as well. Okay. So, see, they've got these two different words here. Bem and bom. We've got bom modifies telemovel, while bem modifies funciona. Oh, okay. So we have these similarly spelled words, but that are actually kind of different in meaning. So I think Portuguese is deceptively similar to Spanish. It's not. They're not as similar as you would think they are. So that's something to consider. And I think that's what makes Portuguese so interesting, is that it's kind of sneaky. People are like, oh, it's Portuguese, it's just Spanish, you learned Spanish, it's more more countries speak Spanish, it's probably more helpful. You probably translates over easily. But in reality, the reality of the situation is that they are two distinct tongues, and that they should be studied as such and not clumped together, because that's not really how language works, bud. It's not the same as British English and American English being two different accents. They're not really two different dialects, I wouldn't say, because most of our words, even words that we don't use the same, like, American examples of, like, we call the trunk of a car the trunk, and they call it the boot. We call the hood, and they call the bonnet, the bonnet. Things like that. We call cookies, and they call them biscuits. They call fries crisps. Or no, wait. They call fries chips, and they call chips crisps. Which, yeah. Now, all of these words, well, they're used differently, but they aren't. They are words in both variances of the language, right? Like, we don't use bonnet for the hood of a car, but we do use it for, like, a baby bonnet, And crisp is not what we call chips, but it is something we would describe something as, potentially chips. Biscuits, we have biscuits that are not cookies, so these words are not different, but here in Portuguese and Spanish and other dialects of Portuguese and dialects of Spanish, you have words that are not in use in one language or the other, as I understand, and that would be the difference, as I understand. I'm no professional, but that's my take on the situation, you know what I'm saying? So, I think that'll do it. I think that'll wrap it up. I think we've done a flaming crash course in the culture and the way of Portuguese existence in some tiny little way, and I hope that this has increased your awareness of the world. Portugal. Let's look at this beautiful place one last time before we sign off. I think this will be the end of the series. I can't imagine I will ever have an assignment that has me do this exact thing again. But if it does, Portugal, I'd be glad to revisit. This is a beautiful picture. Let's end on this wonderful little picture here. I have no clue who this guy is, but we all know him. We all know Ronaldo, and I guess this is Eusebio. So, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening to me talk about Portugal for probably 40 minutes worth of footage, at least. And you know what? Remember, there is no replacement for education. You gotta, if you read up on the world, if you read up on life and on other people and on other places, I think you'll become a better person. I think you'll be able to increase your capacity for intelligence, at least. I don't know. I'm saying words, and they might be sticking. They might not mean anything. I may be insane. In any case, thank you for watching. This is me signing off. Goodbye.